again, it's Elaine! Again, I'm going to be doing a video today, a vlog video basically, about the process of getting published. Today I'm going to be talking about query letters, which if you don't know, a query letter is a basic professional cover letter that you send out to agents as an inquiry of would you like to represent my book. Now this is a professional cover letter, but it's also a very unusual professional cover letter. So it's not just like write a job application cover letter and send that in, because the job you're applying for is that of an author. Now I'm going to tell you that right now I am in the process of writing a query letter for my book Bones of Stone. I am very early on in the process. I usually end up writing 3 or 4 drafts before I ever send a query letter out. I also, by the way, sometimes will write multiple query letters for the same book with the intention of trading them out, because different query letters might highlight different elements of the book. Because like when you're writing a job application cover letter, you want to tailor it a bit to who you're applying to. So like if I'm looking at an agent that says specifically they are looking for LGBTQ plus characters, I'm going to highlight whether the book has any LGBTQ plus characters, versus if I'm looking at an agent that has not mentioned that, I might not include that. Not because I want to surprise them or spring it on them, but just because there might be other things that I want to stress for them. I learned to write a query letter through a variety of different sources. I will admit the first query letter I wrote was about 10 years ago now, and therefore I don't remember all the sources I used to first figure it out. I can tell you I first started just by Googling query letters. I looked at dozens of different websites, different vlogs, different articles that talked about what a query letter is. And then I sat down and read pretty much the entirety of the website Query Shark, which Query Shark is a vlog that one agent has where she breaks down, I think it's a she, breaks down and critiques different queries to give people an idea of what works and what doesn't. She does not do it to everyone who sends one in, and she has specifically said she's not that interested in doing fantasy or sci-fi because speculative are not her genre. She does mystery and thrillers, and those are just different genres. Their query letters are going to be slightly different. But the overall structure of a query letter is relatively simple. Okay, this is the query letter I'm working on right now. First thing you'll look at is the first sentence. This is a placeholder. You will never send out a query letter to just Dear Agent, and you will definitely not want to send a query letter out to Dear Agent who will fucking love this book. I can tell you I did accidentally send one out with the filler still in, and no, I did not get a response. So no, you want to direct to a specific agent. We'll get to choosing agents later, but know that this will be Dear Miss this, Dear Mr. this, whatever. The second sentence, this varies. Like, I saw some sources that say you want to jump directly into the actual query, which is why I do have older queries where literally it just starts with introduction to character, introduction to world, introduction to whatever, and I don't include the pertinent information about the book until the bottom of the page. But I don't really like that. It doesn't feel right. And also, frankly, I did see some sources that were like, no, introduce yourself. This is a business letter. Treat it like a business letter. So now I'm starting with the basic, I am writing to request representation. It's a basic sentence. The important thing is you do need to include somewhere in your query, whether it be the front or the end, you need to include how many words your book is. And yes, if you have not already done this, you need to look up and make sure your book is within the acceptable word count for a novel of your genre. Most books, that word count is only like 100,000 if at max. If you're writing speculative fiction, fantasy, or sci-fi, you can get 50,000 more depending on what sources you look at. But I can tell you from experience, if you're sending out a 149,000 word fantasy novel, you're going to get a lot of rejections that directly say that's too many words. You also want to include genre. You can be more specific than just general genre. You can be like Gaslamp fantasy, whatever, but I am always wary of that because those little micro genres, people can see them as something very, very specific, and if you're not meeting the tropes that they're looking for, they might think that you basically were lying to them. And also, of course, include the title. Then the next thing you want to jump into is introduction to the book. This is by most sources agreed to be not just the blurb you'll see on the back of the book. It's similar but different. The important things about this is you need to show the tone of your book as well as just introduce what's happening. And that can be really hard in 1 or 2 paragraphs. I have seen some sources say that this should all be 1 paragraph. I almost always break it into 2. I don't know why, it's just something that always happens. This particular one I struggled with a lot. And one of the things I say about query letters is if you're struggling to write the letter, it might be a sign that there's something wrong with the book. And I will admit, this query letter, partially for me writing it, highlighted me some of the weird aspects of this book. I don't necessarily think they're all problems, but they did make it an interesting query to write. And specifically, this is a book that is a fantasy novel, but it doesn't directly introduce the fantasy tropes until later on in the book. And also, it is a book that there's a lot of action at the beginning that is building towards something rather slowly. But it's action, so it feels like stuff's happening. But it's a slow build to get to the actual plot. And the actual, like, hardcore action in the book is surprisingly short. So that made it a very difficult query to figure out how to manage. Because importantly, you do not include the end of the book in the query. You should include the basic setup of the world if you're writing speculative fiction. And in this particular query, I literally do a paragraph that is the setup of the world. This is something I've never done before. I don't know if I'm going to keep it when I do edits, but at least for now, this is how I have it structured. And then after that, the second paragraph is the introduction to the main character, what she needs, what is preventing her from getting what she needs, and how she's fighting to get it. In this case, literally fighting. But I also drop throughout the entire thing little clues about things. Like this fantasy novel is set in a pseudo Roman-esque world. It's not Rome. I am not using the Roman gods, but it's sort of vaguely reminiscent of Rome. So just dropping Roman-sounding words and the Colosseum will help tell the agents what they're looking at before they have to actually read anything. I also afterwards have my bio. This is the longest bio I have ever included in any query. Most of my bios are literally just this. 2 words that lists some creds. I don't have much creds, and that's why I've never written a long bio, because in my opinion, why would they care about anything except for my credentials? Some agents, though, really just want to get to know who you are. Now, I will say this is another thing that agents vary on. If you go and look at different agents' vlogs and different agents writing about queries, some of them will directly say they don't want a bio. They're not interested in a bio. They don't care about who you are. And if so, if you're writing multiple different queries, you can write one with a bio, one without a bio. And if you're not including a bio, you can include more on the book itself. This one, like I said, has more bio information than I usually include. I did decide to start including the I'm a Ghost Tour guide because that is sort of a credential. Like, my job is telling stories, and showing people that I can tell stories will get them to want to read my books. I also mentioned that I studied literature and theater. I mentioned that I studied theater because, I don't know, it makes me special. I sometimes include that I attended a National Book Foundation summer writing camp, but I've started to feel guilty about that because, like, we're now talking about it like, oh my god, it's been over a decade and a half, maybe drop it. This time I have included a little bit of my personal philosophy as to why I write fantasy, just to see if it does anything for me. Like, I will admit, like, I've seen this included in some queries, and it often feels a little bit masturbatory to me, and that's why I've never included it before, but objectively, why not? And this is a good book for me to include it in, but this book has some heavier themes than I usually include. So I have included a little bit of my moral philosophy here. Now, this sentence sucks. These sentences are going to get completely rewritten. I currently effing hate them. They're terrible. They are almost run-ons. They are confusing. They are badly structured. But I have it here. I might get rid of it. I don't know. Other things you can include in a query that I don't. Some agents will suggest you include comps. And yes, if you have a good comparable novel, this is a good place to include it. I don't tend to because I struggle to find comps. Also, audience. A lot of places will say you want to include things like this book is geared towards, especially if you're writing for young audiences, you want to state this book is aimed at 12th graders. This book is aimed at 6th graders. This book is aimed at 16-year-old girls. Things like that. I always like to conclude with a thank you because I like to be polite, and also you need a conclusion. After that, of course, this is a business letter. So like all business letters, you're going to include like your signature and address, phone number, stuff like that. Okay, so jumping in here one more time because the way I recorded this the first time I realized was quite dangerous. So if a agent is requesting sample materials like a sample writing or synopsises, what I'll usually do is I'll do the thank you, I'll do a brief conclusion with just like name and email, then I'll write sample, insert the sample, write synopsis, insert the synopsis. I like to separate everything with asterisks because they're pretty, even though Microsoft keeps trying to autocorrect them to other things. Then I do one more thank you because you can never be thankful enough. And at the end, I do the full business letter conclusion of name, phone number, address, and email. I don't know if this is right. I've never found a source that will just break down what the structure is supposed to look like, but this seems to make sense to me. The other thing that you will be doing at the same time you're writing a query, and I suggest writing as soon as you're writing a query, though I have struggled to get these and quite often will just avoid writing them for a really long time because I hate working on them, where is it? Pitch and Bits. Nowadays, a lot of agents are moving towards different websites where you can just literally drop in information. So that's really convenient, and I love them, and I prefer them over just sending an email 100%. But that allows them to ask a lot more questions, and the questions they ask are ones that you're going to have pre-prepared answers for. If this file ever opens, I will show you what I'm talking about. Oh, it might already be open. That might be the problem. Here we go. Come on, come up. You're a good file. Okay, this is what I call the pitch and bits. Pitch is your elevator pitch. We are looking for one, at very most 2 sentences that give you a blurb about this book that will hopefully sign people on immediately. Like an elevator pitch, they're called that because the idea is if you meet someone in an elevator, you need to be able to pitch them your book or your project between floors. And that means it needs to be short, it needs to be punchy, it needs to include enough information that they know why your book is special, but basically just drag them into wanting to read it. I struggle like mad with this. I'm not good at this. I'm terrible at it. So usually I'll go through 4 or 5 pitches before I'm anywhere near happy. Sometimes I'll also ask for a bio completely separated. You'll notice right now mine is just copy and pasted from the one from the query. This one might grow or not. Usually I just use a slightly longer form version than what's in the query, quite often literally just adding 1 sentence. Comps are the next important thing. What I try to do with comps, and which I've always struggled with, what I've read about comps is you're looking for books that came out relatively recently. You're looking for books that match yours in some kind of way, and books that sold well, because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to tell your agent, like proposed agent, that my book is sellable. Right now, I have Furies of Calderon by Jim Butcher, just because it's the only thing that I've found that has the right level of Roman, but not Roman. I usually look for something that's tonally accurate to my book, and right now I can't find anything. My spelling, please don't make fun of me. I'm looking for something with action and fights, with a brusque, aggressive heroine. I don't know where I'm going with it. I need something, and yeah, my comps are usually more than a decade out of date because I don't really focus on reading new releases, and that's a problem. I'm working to correct this now, but I can give you advice as someone who's trying to be an author. Yeah, you need to read new releases. Then the readers is the audience, so it can be things like fans of this author will like this book. I've seen a lot of things that are like fans of Game of Thrones will like this book. Fans of sometimes even just straight up like TV shows, fans of Stranger Things, which I think is cheating. But you can also just say 12-year-old girls, 14-year-old boys, 25-year-old women. Now, favorite lines is something I've only seen on a couple of agents' websites. And so far, I've never actually queried those agents because I find it absurd. You want me to find a line that is my favorite in the entire book. I feel like that's more set up for someone who's writing more literary fiction. And I'm not writing literary fiction. I'm not focusing on the absolute beauty of each sentence. The focus is the story and moving action forward. And I struggle with it because I don't know if they're looking for something that's going to be an epitomization of my book, something that will give them an idea of what I'm looking for, or something that's special and different. And also, I'm not an exceptionally poetically minded person, so even if I find something poetic and beautiful, doesn't mean everyone else will. So I've picked 3 lines at random so far that stood out to me on the last edit of my book that I sort of like. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep any of them, but I have something in this section for now that I can start working with. If I'm sitting funny, I'm sorry, my cat is currently curled up behind me in the chair. Let me see if I can show you. Baby kitty. But the next step for me is going to be going through and giving my query another draft. Like I said, like to edit a couple times, of course, before it gets anywhere near another human being. This time I'm going to be a brave little girl and send my query to my friends and family and see if they can offer me some editing advice, which is terrifying to me, but I need to do something. What I'm doing isn't working, so I will tell you if I have any success with this one. I don't know if I will.